All right, this is urbanization and political machines. Okay, so when all these immigrants came to the United States, they weren't just immigrants moving into the cities. You also had people moving from rural areas into the urban population of the United States. Okay, so our urban population grew from about 10 million people in 1870 to over 30 million by 1900. Many immigrants remained in the cities where they would work long hours for little pay. Okay, and this also leads into all of our talk about unions. Okay, but still, most immigrants felt their standard of living had improved in the United States compared to what it was before. You also start to see farmers begin to move to cities because of better paying jobs. There's electricity, they have running water, plumbing, and lots of entertainment. Okay, so when you bring all this different mix of people together, you have a new type of urban environment. You have housing and transportation needs. They're going to change due to the increase in the amount of people living in cities. Okay, so how are people going to get around? As the price of land increases, building owners start to begin to build up because land is just becoming becoming cost prohibitive, so it's easier to buy a little bit of land and to go up into the sky. Thus, we get our first skyscrapers, which were tall steel frame buildings, which were constructed for this reason. Okay, Chicago and Louis Sullivan contributed to the design of many of the skyscrapers. Also in this urban environment, in the late 1800s, various kinds of mass transit developed to move large numbers of people around cities quickly. You begin to see people move with horse car and later to the more sophisticated electric trolley cars and elevated railroads. Engineers also create ways to move the ever-expanding population around the city. Dang it. Okay, so in these cities, you weren't always separated. Not everybody lived together. You would have a definite separation by class. There would be boundaries that could be seen between where wealthy, middle class, and working class people lived. Wealthy families lived in the heart of the city, where they constructed elaborate homes. The middle class, which would include people like doctors, lawyers, engineers, and teachers, tended to live away from the city, and they would commute in. The majority of urban dwellers were part of the working class who lived in the city tenements or dark and crowded multi-family apartments. Okay, obviously with the growth of the cities, you're going to have urban problems, okay? These result in an increase in crime. You're going to have more fires, you're going to have more disease, and you're going to have more pollution. From 1880 to 1900, there was a large increase in the murder rate. Okay, you have people living closer proximity to each other. They're going to tend to handle the problems in an inappropriate manner. Native-born Americans blamed immigrants for the increase in crime, going back to our nativism people. Alcohol also contributed to crime in the late 1800s, and that's going to be a contributing factor to the passage of Prohibition later on. Also, one thing is a problem is you have contaminated drinking water from improper sewage disposal, which would result in epidemics of typhoid fever and cholera. Okay, oftentimes when you have urban politics, you're going to have a different type of political system as opposed to maybe where we live. Okay, so this new political system comes up to cope with new urban problems. They were oftentimes called a political machine. This was an informal political group that was designed to gain and keep power and provide the essentials to city dwellers in exchange for votes. Okay, you would have people who were called party bosses who would run the political machines. George Plunkett was an Irish immigrant, was one of New York City's most powerful party bosses. These party bosses had tight control of the city's money. Okay. Now, many of these politicians became wealthy due to fraud or graft, which means getting money through dishonest or questionable means. The most famous of these political bosses was New York Democratic political machine, was run out of Tammany Hall. His name was Boss Tweed, who helped run it. Okay. During the 1860s, 1870s, Tammany Hall's boss was William M. Tweed. He ends up going to prison for all the corruption that he commits, though he was able to provide for like the city, the lower, the immigrants and those people coming in. Another famous group was Thomas and James Pendergrass, were party bosses in good old Kansas City, Missouri. They basically led the state and city politics from the 1890s to the 1930s. They're also the ones who helped get Harry Truman his start. And if you don't know who Harry Truman is, look it up. Okay. Opponents of political machines, such as Thomas Nast, would often blast these bosses for their corruption. Defenders, though, thought machines helped supply necessary services and helped to assimilate the masses of new city dwellers. Okay, that concludes our talk on urbanization and political machines. Make sure you take your quiz over it. I think it'll be 2 or 3 questions here on Edmodo, and get that done in a proper amount of time. And we will talk about this a little bit more in class. Thank you.